Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and we're gonna do a I've exploded from too many impressions.
Man, you managed to do multiple not very good impressions really quickly.
Talking about, Josh? This is a wonderful Katharine Hepburn.
It's really not.
Oh, see, I disagree with you there, fella.
Yeah, I don't know. I for some reason, I feel like when you do we just did our Dumbo episode last time, and your impression of the ringmaster in Dumbo was stronger.
Do something, good chap. Giving me another compliment there.
So, in this season of Awesome Movie Year, we're talking about the films of 1941. And we're here at Jason's pick. Jason, what did you pick?
I picked The Philadelphia Story by George Cukor, whose name I probably mispronounce every time.
Cukor, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I said. And starring icons of the screen, Katharine Hepburn, Jimmy Stewart, and one of my favorite all-time movie stars, Cary Grant.
All great movie stars. I mean, I think one of the major appeals of this movie is all three of them as like the height of their movie star charisma.
Just firing, bro. They're all firing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you can't help but be drawn into these characters just because of how much screen presence these three actors have. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was a play, and Katharine Hepburn starred in the play when she was known as Box Office Poison. With the help of Howard Hughes, she bought the movie rights and she had final casting say, and this was her comeback vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think of her needing a comeback. Although we just, again, going back to the last episode, we just talked about Disney needing a comeback, something that's even more monolithic. But she had a string of flops and was infamously labeled Box Office Poison alongside several other female stars in a very like a notorious I think it was just an ad essentially taken out in Variety or one of the trade publications. We talked about this in our 1939 season when we talked about Joan Crawford, who was another female star who was labeled Box Office Poison at the time. But, you know, she took charge, right? Like you said, not only did she star in this play and have the rights herself that she was able to sell for the movie, but the play was written for her, that she worked with Philip Berry, the playwright, to come up with something that would be a showcase for her talents. And it was a huge success. It played on Broadway for over 400 performances. There was a national tour, and then there was this film. So it was a very smart way to take charge of her career, not just have a comeback in hoping that she could find a role that would be successful, but to really make it happen for herself.
So, Josh, the play was inspired by Helen Hope Montgomery, a socialite, I believe, from Philadelphia, and obviously it tracks with the idea of divorce, romance, the subgenre due to the Hays Code of comedy of remarriage.
Right. The idea that we could, because these characters had been married and gotten divorced, you can have this love triangle with the new fiance because it's all kind of above board and there's no technical adultery going on here. And that's a way around the Hays Code. But that structure allowed for a lot of really clever, witty comedies like this film.
Has the new fiance ever won one of these?
No, maybe. I mean, that's such a cliche. Like there's that, who is it? Is it Michael Showalter who made that movie, The Baxter, where the whole concept is he's the boring new man who gets cast aside, but the movie is all about him.
Mm-hmm. That's great movie.
Right. That was a fun movie.
Yeah. So the movie, again, going along with all of this success, the movie also was a success. It grossed $3.3 million on its budget of $914,000. It was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director for George Cukor, Best Actress for Katharine Hepburn, Best Supporting Actress for Ruth Hussey, and it won 2 Oscars. Jimmy Stewart won Best Actor, and it won Best Adapted Screenplay. And this was all the Oscars for the films of 1940. It was released in New York City at the very end of 1940 on December 26th, but the general release of the film was held until January 1941 to avoid competing with the play, which was on tour around the country at the time.
Which now you would never do that. You would, synergize those two.
Yeah, I mean, it was still synergy because the play it was obviously very, very fresh in people's memories. And, 1 month difference might have meant that the play could have come through your town and then the film would open a few weeks later.
Yeah, and now you could watch it on demand a day after it's released.
That is true, yes. So it was also a hit with critics as well. Bosley Crowther in the New York Times said, "It has been a long time since Hollywood has spent itself so extravagantly and to such entertaining effect upon a straight upper crust fable, an unblushing apologia for plutocracy. Money and talent are mostly going these days into elaborate outdoor epics and rugged individualist films. It is like old times to see one about the trials and tribulations of the rich, and to have Miss Hepburn back after a 2-year recess as another spoiled and willful daughter of America's unofficial peerage, comporting herself easily amid swimming pools, stables, and the usual appurtenances of a huge estate. Someone was rudely charging a few years that Miss Hepburn was, quote, box office poison. If she is, a lot of people don't read labels, including us."
Yeah, I mean, it's so stupid. To use someone like current, like what if they were like, oh, Charlize Theron is box office poison because she had like 2 or 3 bad, movies that didn't track. And you're like, look at what all the great work she's done over the years, and you can expect that she'll do more great work. I mean, look, she's the most recognized and awarded and nominated actress of all time, right? And as a film actor, and she's a commanding presence. Just, I can't believe the stupidity of saying that.
Right. I mean, and if you read that ad, like it is ridiculous. And the idea that theater owners would take out an ad to basically like beg studios not to cast these people is kind of insane. But they do claim in there, they're like, oh, it's not that these people aren't talented. It's just that audiences don't want to see them in movies. We're not trying to, but it's still bullshit.
I mean, and Josh, I think we talked about this before because I want to be accurate. I think they did this about men and women at the time, not just the women, right?
Yeah, it was mostly women. I think I'd have to pull it up again, but I had read the actual text of what they wrote, and there was at least, I think Edward Arnold was one that was mentioned in there, but it was more female stars than male stars, definitely. So there's not, you can't say there's no sexism involved here, but either way, whether it's sexist or not, it's still absolutely like
nonsensical.
Yeah, exactly. So, right. In fact, Edward Arnold is the only male star mentioned alongside Mae West, Greta Garbo, Joan Crawford, and Katharine Hepburn in this advertisement.
Well, what did those four ever do?
Yeah.
To modernize this, and it's not the same, but like you remember Girls Trip was such a huge hit. And then I think it was basically this year we got One of Them Days, and where were those kind of female-led, whether they're urban or not, kind of films. So it's still women have an uphill battle, even though they're, I think, much bigger draws a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thankfully, Hepburn was able to, like I said, kind of take the reins here and engineer this comeback, and then a long, decades-long career after that. But someone who had less clout or financial resources at the time might not have been able to do that. And, that's a battle that is certainly still fought.
Well, I think when we did the women, we talked about the same thing with Joan Crawford, about how she had to engineer her own publicity to kind of get back into the good graces of society.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Crawford was someone who maybe didn't have the same level of resources that Katharine Hepburn did, but she, of course, was able to come back as well. So Hepburn's comeback is really the main subject of a lot of these reviews. The pseudonymous May Tenay in the Chicago Tribune said,
"What a word, pseudonymous! I don't even know what that is."
It's a pseudonym. It's like matinee. It was a pseudonym that I think May Tenay. Yeah. that was used, I think, by a number of critics. It was the name of the critic in the Chicago Tribune for a very long time. So whoever that is, she said, "The Hepburn genius, long left a smoldering in oblivion, blazes forth brightly in the screen version of the Philip Barry stage play in which Katharine won signal success. The leading role, that of a rich young woman of complex personality, provides the star with a cunningly equipped show window for the display of her craftsmanship. And she doesn't miss a trick, turning out a finished and completely intriguing performance. I prophesy that the most rabid non-Hepburnite, and the world holds many such, will succumb to its charm and artistry. It's all engrossing, believable. Duller is brushed with the stardust of humor, and the dialogue is both deep and piquant."
It's so crazy to think of this because in 1938, she did Bringing Up Baby, which I know wasn't a hit and now is regarded as a classic, but like to have that 2 years before and then be like, hey, finally the comeback we've been waiting for.
Right. I mean, that wasn't a hit at all. That was one of the flops that got her labeled box office poison. And the fact that she'd been gone for 2 years, I mean, now maybe a big star might take 2 years in between films, but the way that actors churned out movies during this period, to be off screen for 2 years is an eternity.
Yeah, and she had worked with Cukor, Josh, many times before, including the last movie before this, Just Holiday in 1938, Sylvia Scarlett in 1935, and Little Women, probably their most famous collaboration before this in 1933. So you could see she's curating who she wants in this film.
Right. And again, as we said, she had the choice of the director here as well as her co-stars, and she chose Cukor because they had worked well together in the past. So finally, Virginia Wright in the Los Angeles Daily News said, "The Philadelphia Story is more than a carbon copy of Philip Barry's successful play. It has been embellished here and cut there until it emerges now as a smooth, sophisticated, warm, and very funny study of the rich and their detractors. Its principal success is due, of course, to the return of Katharine Hepburn to the screen. Barry wrote the play for her, and no actress in the country could give Tracy Lord the arrogance, the shining superiority, or even the eventual warmth that Hepburn does. Philip Barry should be very grateful for the direction of George Cukor and the adaptation of Donald Ogden Stewart. He is equally fortunate in the casting of the film. While Katharine Hepburn dominates the whole proceedings, she has a brilliant supporting cast. The Philadelphia Story is a long and beautifully sustained motion picture."
Donald Ogden Stewart listened to live performances of the play while writing this screenplay to make sure that the lines that received the most laughter were included.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, like it makes perfect sense. And of course, now, as you're saying, a hit play like this, we'd have a filmed, a taped version or whatever that we'd be able to watch online. But of course, that's not how things were then. And it's interesting too that he would have done that and understood which lines landed, because I did watch the 1956 remake High Society, which is not great. But one thing that really they bungle in that is there are certain lines that come off so well in the Philadelphia Story that they just stumble over or step on in that remake. Like somebody should have listened to that recording when they made that movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film, but I mean, look at who we're talking about, right? I mean, like we said, probably, if not the three of the greatest movie stars, and also just actors. Whatever effort they put into it, they come off it as effortless a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the charm and that movie star quality. And that, I know you always like to talk about alternate casting, and there were some other options here, but Hepburn made the right choices for her co-stars.
So those alternate castings, I think, would have been great also, because it would have been Clark Gable as Dexter. It would have been a more kind of rugged ex-husband type. And then Spencer Tracy, who's as good as any actor ever, as Mike Connor, the Jimmy Stewart character. And I think he's just awesome. And, he and Hepburn had a secret relationship for like 26 years.
Right. Yeah. And they made many movies together, and certainly they had plenty of chemistry. But I don't know. I think maybe he would have been a little too, like, I like the way that Jimmy Stewart has that not naive quality.
Aw shucks.
Yeah. The aw shucks that's kind of mixed with a bit of cynicism. And he blends that really well in this film. So, you picked this one, Jason. When had you first seen this?
I think I first saw it in college. We've talked about His Girl Friday, which is probably my favorite of this kind of screwball, comedy of remarriage stuff. This came out, that was 1940, and this was kind of the end of 40/41. So just those two are good companion pieces, I think.
Yeah, and I should watch His Girl Friday. I think we said this when we've talked about Howard Hawks in the past. I should probably watch it again because I remember being a little exhausted by it. Although I really enjoy a lot of screwball comedies, and I love Cary Grant, and I love Rosalind Russell. And this I saw later than you. I mean, it was probably 15 years ago or something the first time I watched it, but it was after college. And I really like this. And I went back and looked at my little like blog entry that I had written when I first saw this film. And I did say that sometimes these movies, these screwball comedies, I found a bit frustrating, especially the way that the sexist portrayal of women. And that part of that is the code and is the comedy of remarriage, that things have to end up in this very traditional place at the end. And there's frustrations related to that here that we'll talk about. But everything else is so good. The performances are so good. The dialogue is so good. And I think it tempers a lot of that sexism when, as pointed out in that one review, like Tracy is a complex character. These are all complex characters. They're not just sexist stereotypes.
As you bring up often, when we're looking back at women characters of this time, the importance of security and kind of having that financial, lack of pressure on them is extremely important.
Right. Although you could say that Tracy, as this upper class heiress character, doesn't need a husband in order to have that security.
That's true, but she also has been divorced, which was not as popular back then, and she has daddy issues, Josh.
She does. Her daddy is giving her those issues. I think we could argue maybe as we get into this. So, Dave, had you seen this before?
I had not. Like Jason mentioned, His Girl Friday, I watched recently and really loved. So I was looking forward to getting to this because I know it's obviously a major classic.
And you were disappointed by it, I think.
I didn't really like it that much.
Dang, bro.
Yeah.
Not cool. See, we had such harmony. You liked my pick. I liked your pick. It's a nice supportive agreement, but Dave is going to bring us down.
Here he goes.
That's right.
Mucking up the waters, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So anything else you want to say about the background of this film, Jason?
Those three movies I mentioned with Cukor and Hepburn, Sylvia Scarlett bringing up Baby and Holiday, also co-starred Cary Grant. This was the last of their 4 collabs together, Josh. And going back to Jimmy Stewart winning the Oscar for this, he said, getting an Oscar for the Philadelphia Story was the easiest Oscar you could imagine. All you had to do was get out of the way.
Right. I mean, and I think Donald Ogden Stewart, that was that Jimmy Stewart who said that, or Donald Ogden Stewart who said that as the writer?
Oh, I thought it was, maybe it was Donald Ogden Stewart. And Jimmy Stewart said that it was kind of given to him, as a makeup for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And then he put the statue in his father's hardware store in Indiana, Pennsylvania.
Right. Yeah. And it was Donald Ogden Stewart who said all you had to do was get out of the way. And presumably much of the dialogue here is directly taken from the play. But I think you could argue with not to take away from the actors, but the material is so solid that, even like I said in High Society, where they kind of step on some of those lines, the wit of the writing still comes through.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, if anything, you can say he did a good job of like making sure that the care and craft was there.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll come back and talk some more of our general thoughts on the Philadelphia Story. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1941, we're talking about Jason's pick, The Philadelphia Story. And we've said some things here, but what's your favorite thing about this movie, Jason?
The interplay between the three of them. I think that's probably everybody's favorite thing, right? When you have such high caliber. This is going to be a weird analogy, Josh, but stick with me here. Okay. I'm a big Michael Mann fan, and everything. So before Heat, he had made this TV pilot / TV movie called LA Takedown, which is basically Heat before Heat, right? And they have like the big shootout, and they have the diner scene, the famous confrontation between Pacino and De Niro. And in LA Takedown, it's like, that's fine. And then you see Pacino and De Niro do it, and you're like, holy cow, that is just like sizzling top of the line craftsmanship. And that's what I feel whenever you get any combination of these guys, or, we mentioned Rosalind Russell and His Girl Friday, like pretty much any combination of these great screwball comedy actors is just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, and I was maybe downplaying their contribution a bit, but it is key. It is key, and you can see that when you watch the remake with different actors. And I don't think this play is really performed anymore, but certainly you could imagine that going to see this play, not only would it, of course, seem dated, but without the charisma of those stars, it might not come across as well. But I agree, they're all so good in this movie, and there's aspects of all of these characters that might be unlikable. And I think going back to that idea of the complexity, that they can portray these characters doing things that are unlikable. And they're still just so mesmerizing to watch. They're so entertaining. They're so funny. And despite the ending wrapping things up in a way that, to modern viewers seems perhaps a bit reductive, I still find it all satisfying to watch because of how enjoyable these actors are.
I didn't mind the ending. It's a rom-com ending, right? So that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, but I think one of the strengths of this film, and we should say, to explain the idea here, of course, Katharine Hepburn's character, Tracy, she had been married to C.K. Dexter Haven, the Cary Grant character.
What a name.
Yeah, right. And I love that, there's so many names like this in old Hollywood films. And I love that it's like Mike Connor, who also has a ridiculous name, Macaulay Mike Connor, at one point in the movie does say that, C.K. Dexter Haven, what kind of name is that? So I appreciate it.
Right. And the night that he went out drinking and goes to, confront CK, and he just goes, CK Dexter Haven, CK Dexter Haven. Just repeating it over and over.
We never find out what CK stands for, though, so who knows. But they were married. They got divorced. 2 years later, she is now getting married to the very boring George Kittredge, who is an employee of her father's mining company, who's kind of risen in the ranks and seems to be making a play to run for political office. And I mean, he's fine. They don't demonize him necessarily, but he's clearly boring. And so C.K. Dexter Haven returns from his sabbatical in South America to crash Tracy's wedding.
What was he doing down there, Josh?
Yeah, we leave that to the imagination.
Calling Barranca.
Oh, that.
Calling Barranca.
You were implying something salacious, but no, he was running a little shipping depot, apparently.
Yeah,
he's going to get that in every single episode.
Anyway, he comes back knowing that Tracy's going to get married, right? And you explain the kind of rigmarole that is in.
Right, there's a whole contrived way that he gets these two reporters, Jimmy Stewart's character, Mike Connor, and the photographer played by Ruth Hussey. He kind of finagles them into the wedding, even though Tracy is very anti-publicity and she's very against these gossip rags or whatever. And there's a bit of deception involved. And not only they're pretending that they're not really reporters. And then Tracy's family, they pretend that her dad is her uncle and her uncle is her dad. And that stuff was a little, I thought, unnecessary maybe. I mean, it's fun, but I think the movie improves greatly once everyone knows who everyone is and they're more straightforward interactions. But what I was going to say is that one of the great things about this film is that not only is it she could end up back with C.K. Dexter Haven, which we assume is the standard rom-com ending. She's obviously not going to end up with George Kittredge. But Mike Connor comes in and they have this connection. And Jimmy Stewart and Katharine Hepburn have so much chemistry, just like she does with Cary Grant, that if you don't know how this movie is going to turn out, you can watch it and think, man, maybe she should end up with Mike. And the fact that there are two actually viable love interests in this film, I think is rare for a movie like this.
Yeah, now we would just make it a throuple, and that would be fun.
Right.
But, you're talking
about challengers of its era.
Talking about reductionism, the reductive character here is the Ruth Hussey character, who is the photographer on the newspaper that Mike's working for. And she's the classic, stand by your man. Whatever this guy does, I'll still be there for him in the end.
Yeah, and Ruth Hussey is good. I mean, as we said, she actually got an Oscar nomination, whereas Cary Grant did not get an Oscar nomination for this film.
Just real fast, we've talked about how overlooked Grant has been by the Oscars before. So
but it's
just how it is.
It's crazy though, because this film clearly was not overlooked, and the two other main stars got their nominations, and Stewart won. So anyway, Ruth Hussey is good in this film, but And I like the character, but I agree that she's kind of gets short shrift. And especially because of the way that Mike is smitten with Tracy to the point where at the end, when she calls off her wedding to George, he offers to marry her. And she says, thanks, but no thanks. And she gets remarried to C.K. Dexter Haven. But literally a minute or less after he has proposed marriage to Tracy, then Ruth Hussey, Liz, is like, well, I think we should get married. And so she's really just taken it all. Like she's kind of a doormat in a way.
Yes, but she took her shot, So, that's the happy ending stuff here that we expect. One thing I want to point out, Josh, and I like a lot of these like single location movies, and this is basically that, except for a trip to the library, and a party in another location. But I think they utilize the location, the giant sprawling estate, really well. And I love, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Cukor does these like really long takes. So he just lets the actors cook. And it's so smart to just let them be.
Right. And I mean, this is based on a stage play. So it could seem stagey. It could seem limited because of that, but it never does. And he approaches it in the right way to make it cinematic, but not distractingly so.
I think so. I mean, Cukor's a legend, obviously. We talked about him as one of the fired directors on Gone with the Wind. But I just think this was, the restraint of not like showing off here really added to the film.
Yeah. I mean, I think like Donald Ogden Stewart, the screenwriter, talking about getting out of the way, perhaps Cukor is doing that as well. And Hepburn has hired him to bring this play to life that she has, basically, kind of supervised over the course of all these performances and from the beginning. So she would know kind of what it needs, I think, and that they're on the same page with that.
Do you think, Josh, did it turn you off that she wore pants all the time?
No, it did not. But I mean, that's part of, not only is part of her image.
Right.
And
she's a modern woman.
Right. And it works for Tracy because Tracy could come off as this very, very spoiled rich person who is kind of insufferable. But I think there's a lot of layers to Tracy. And, when the characters are criticizing her for being too aloof or putting herself on a pedestal, that she isn't that kind of a person. And I like that her connection, for example, with Mike in that library scene that you're talking about is based on she reads his book. And she was dismissive of him as a gossip reporter, but when she reads the book that he wrote and sees how insightful and soulful he is, that's what draws her to him, is his literary quality.
Well, you're talking about these layers, and I love that each one of them has a layer of like self-hatred, right? Mike is a talented quality writer who's just, he knows he's a hack right now and he hates it, right? The Tracy character is more than meets the eye, but there is a coldness that comes off from her that she has to work on, right? And C.K. Dexter Haven is the most charming man in the world, but his marriage fell apart, and obviously he is navigating a situation where he's trying to support, but also still loves her and knows he probably blew it back in the day. So these are complex characters.
Right. I think so. And I think that goes such a long way toward making the cliches or mainstays of the genre come off better, that it's less frustrating, even though I do find some of it frustrating. And I think the ending is a bit disappointing, or at least it's rushed. I could, not that this is a short movie, but I could have used maybe a little more of a sense of how well Tracy and Dexter are reconnecting for them to immediately just get married.
Right. Yeah. So you have this huge scene that you kind of reference after the night, after this big party where she and Mike, the Jimmy Stewart character, like spend the night cavorting, canoodling. They don't sleep together, but they do admit they kissed, and there's clearly flirtation. And would there be some type of emotional resonance if not all of that, but maybe they had split a sequence, and we also saw the same type of connection with her and C.K. Dexter Haven. So when we get to that ending, which is well crafted in that like kind of quick bop, 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 that Cary Grant's leading the scene. And then she's like, really? And tell him that you're going to get married to me. And right, I'm going to get married to you, that type of thing. Like that's really, really works for those style of performances.
Yeah, it does. But I think you're right I mean, to me, again, once the characters lay all the cards on the table and they all know who everyone is and what they're there for, it allows them to have the characters to have that vulnerability with each other and the honesty with each other that I think is really rewarding to watch. And everything that takes place in that aftermath of the big party, the night before the wedding party, where everyone is kind of drunk, is really, really good. But we do focus on the connection that Mike has with Tracy, whereas Dexter's storyline in that period is there's a whole subplot about them trying to get back at the publisher of the magazine that Mike and Liz work for. And so it's a very fun scene. And it's a scene that you referenced where Mike keeps saying, CK Dexter Haven, and Grant and Stewart have great chemistry together too, but there isn't as much in that whole stretch of the film about Dexter's connection with Tracy.
I think that's fair. And I think we could have used that. I mean, Cary Grant is like, he gets top billing. That was part of the deal when he signed on $137,000 in top billing. But I think we see him, he's great in everything, obviously, but I do think we've seen him kind of more effective based on characters in something like a His Girl Friday or Only Angels Have Wings.
Yeah, but I mean, all of it good. And I think if you feel like there is some missing connective tissue in some ways here, the movie star presence of these people makes up for that in some way. If you think, well, I don't know about Tracy falling back in love with Dexter, you can then realize, well, who wouldn't fall in love with Cary Grant, right? And that kind of papers over it a little bit.
Yeah. So, Josh, if they were fighting over you, you're saying you would go with CK Dexter Haven, right?
I don't know. I might. I feel like because I'm more like Mike, right? I'm a self-hating writer, so I don't think I want to be with another self-hating writer.
That'd be too much. Even if Mike pushed you down when leaving 2 years before, you'd be like, I got to let this one go.
Yeah, I think so. I think I might go for CK Dexter Haven or Tracy or both. Maybe I could be part of the throuple.
Josh, speaking of thruples, the character Tracy Lord, do you have a favorite Tracy Lord's movie?
No, I was interested in looking this up and I thought it was hilarious because I thought maybe does Tracy Lord, did she name herself after Tracy Lord, the character? And it's hilarious. In Wikipedia, it has this section that explains how Tracy Lords came up with her name, which has nothing to do with this film. But Wikipedia decides to add in parentheses, Katharine Hepburn's character in the Philadelphia Story is named Tracy Lord, just to like acknowledge that, I guess, even though it actually has nothing to do with it. So no, I was intrigued by that as well, but did not turn out to be the case, unfortunately.
Well, a boy can dream, Josh. Boy can dream. One other thing that we have to note is like, I mean, we've talked about Stewart and we've talked about Grant many, before. Katharine Hepburn, like, what an amazing performer to not only hold her own, but like really be the engine of this whole thing, right? And just crushing it. But I do want to say, like, really, really good casting on the supporting players also.
Yeah, a lot of character actors in these smaller roles in this film, and they're all really appealing to watch. And I think the fact that Ruth Hussey got that Oscar nomination and she was not a star. This was kind of a breakout role for her, although it didn't break her out as much as it maybe could have. But, the fact that she gets that showcase as well. And, all of the players as Tracy's parents and Roland Young, who plays Uncle Willie, who is a fun character actor to watch.
He's great. Yeah.
Virginia Weidler, who plays Dinah, the little sister, who really, really wants Tracy to get back with CK Dexter Haven. She is a lot of fun. So yeah, perfectly cast. And I mean, whether that's Hepburn or Cukor or the studio, whoever it is, they across the board really good.
So, I mean, the lesson is just hire the best actors, write the best screenplay, and get the best director, and you can make a good movie.
That's all you need to do. So, I mean, I feel like I want to talk about the one thing, aside from the ending, which I'm, have maybe mixed feelings about, but I can go along with. The thing that really bothers me sexism-wise in this film is the speech that Tracy's father gives. And he, unlike Dexter, who I don't believe, we never really find out exactly why they got divorced, but I don't believe there's ever an implication that Dexter was cheating on Tracy as part of their divorce. But Tracy's father was cheating on her mother with this dancer,
Tina Morrow,
chorus girl. Yeah. And in fact, the whole scheme to get Mike and Liz into the wedding is based on the idea that if not, then this magazine will publish a story about Tracy's father, who is this rich, like mining mogul or whatever, about his affair. And the mother has been pressured by Tracy to leave the father, but she clearly did not want to. And he shows up for the wedding, and Tracy is kind of resentful, even though her mother is happy that he's there and her sister is happy that he's there. And he gives her this speech basically blaming her for his affair because she wasn't a good enough daughter. And it is a really, I feel like it goes a step beyond simply the prevailing sexist attitude of the time that, hey, men are going to stray and that's just what they do. And it's not a reflection on, their wives or whatever. And he basically blames Tracy for this. And then she apologizes later. And that to me is the one, it bothered me the first time. It bothered me even more the second time. And that's like my main stumbling block in this film.
Okay, I'm okay with that, obviously. I do think that the mother, we're talking about the kind of fully fleshed out characters. I think that her explanation was a good explanation as to like, hey, this doesn't concern you. This is my decision. And like, I'm going to do that. I took that, look, his speech, which was a total a-hole move, right? Agreed. I took her apology not as like, hey, I apologize for making you have an affair, but like, I apologize if I disappointed you as a daughter, like as something deeper than just whatever is going on. Like, every person wants their parents' approval and this and that. I understand why it bothered you, but it didn't kind of correlate as directly to me as it did to you.
Yeah, I mean, if she's apologizing for disappointing him, the only thing that he has said is disappointing is her like inability to provide him with enough emotional support so that he doesn't go have an affair.
Is there more to it in that, like, this kind of quote unquote, like he's the great man, right? And like he expects certain things of his daughter that the divorce is a blemish on his family name. I don't know. I'm not defending it, obviously, but I'm just wondering if there was something beyond that emotionally for them. But yeah, he kind of sucks. And then he comes around when she's like, I'm sorry, I disappointed you. And he's like, I never said that. And I never will.
Right. But he doesn't apologize for being a dick and blaming
He's never going to apologize. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Like if you're hoping for that, you got a long way to go.
No. And I think it would be fine if it just seems like if the movie's perspective was like, he's this pompous, privileged guy who doesn't understand his own sexism and privilege, that's fine. But it seems like the movie is forcing Tracy to apologize. Whereas with Dexter, even though he's got his own male chauvinism, it seems much more that they have both gotten to the same level and that we can be happy that they're together again.
Yeah, there's always got to be that push and pull in the, kind of comedy of remarriage there. But so I understand all that. Josh, did you, this is probably just me, but while I'm watching Uncle Willie, I'm like, man, I really want him and the uncle from Whitnell and I to hang out together.
No, my thought while watching Uncle Willie, who is really horny for Liz, was like, she should go with this guy. Mike is like barely able to acknowledge anything. And here's Uncle Willie, rich Uncle Willie, who just wants to get in her pants. Like, go with him.
Get that money, get that security.
Right, exactly. I feel like they would have been a good match.
That's a good thought right there.
So, but I did also want to mention, it was amusing to me that two characters in this film sing songs from movies that we covered in our 1939 season.
Yeah, Lydia. Oh, Lydia.
Yes, Lydia, the tattooed lady from the Marx Brothers at the circus. And then, of course, Jimmy Stewart sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow while he's drunk. And that wasn't entirely surprising to me. And I'm sure I recognized that the first time I saw this, but I would not have known Lydia, the tattooed lady before. So it was nice to see that show up again.
Glad that we could offer that to you.
Yeah.
Josh.
And a very different context with young Dinah singing that, probably not knowing what she's talking about.
I felt that was yar, Josh, yar.
Is that a real term? Do you know sailing terms, Jason?
I've been sailing before, and I love sailing actually, but it is a real term. It's of a ship responding promptly to the helm, easily manageable. The boat was taut and yar.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Tracy easily manageable is not the way you would ever want to describe her.
She's not Yar.
Yeah. But I feel like we need to give Dave a say here because he did not like this film. So, Dave, what are your criticisms?
Well, I just didn't find it funny. Like straight up, like beginning to end, I was not laughing at all at any of this stuff. But I mean, obviously, that's just my takeaway. It's a comedy classic, whatever. But I did like James Stewart. I thought that he was the best part of this movie. I pretty much whenever he was on screen, I was like, okay, well, this is watchable. There was also a line in here I wrote down. The one time I did laugh when the one guy says, could you use a typewriter? And she's like, no, thanks. I've got one at home. Like, that's exactly the kind of humor that ended up being like everything the Zaz team would do in like Airplane or Naked Gun or stuff like that. So I like that line. I'll give it that. But yeah, I just didn't like these characters. And I did think you said earlier, Josh, that it never gets stagey, but I thought it was very stagey. It felt like just watching a play that just didn't really do anything for me.
I mean, I guess to me, I feel like if it ever did feel like watching a play, it was like watching a great play. And I was fine with just watching these characters talk to each other in standing in a room or whatever, because they were so entertaining. And the dialogue is, I don't know how many times I laughed out loud necessarily, but it's so witty and so clever. And it's just, I appreciated all of it.
It's fun and easy to watch. Sorry, Dave, you're wrong.
Well, maybe not for Dave. So should we rate this out of 5 little sailboats or maybe?
Yeah, so the reference there is that Cary Grant's character as a wedding gift gives Katharine Hepburn a model boat, which is the boat that they sailed together and that they
on their honeymoon.
They loved. It was a happy time. So, Jess, my good man, now I'm doing a worse impression for you, but I'll give it 3.5 model sailboats.
I'll give it 3.5 as well. It's a great film though. And I think, my stumbling block here tripped me up a bit, but otherwise, overall, just very entertaining. So 3.5 out of 5 for me. Dave, how many sailboats do you rate this?
2.5 sailboats from me.
Man.
So yeah.
Thank you, Josh, for standing up for me.
Yeah.
You're a regular CK Dexter Haven.
No, I'm a Mike Connor, as we have described already, but I feel like we've supported each other here in our picks this season. It probably won't happen again. So I'm glad that we could do that. And we'll come back and talk about the legacy of the Philadelphia Story. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1941, we are talking about Jason's pick, The Philadelphia Story. And we've discussed a lot of the major players in this film already. Jimmy Stewart, we talked about in our episodes on Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, as well as The Ice Follies of 1939. Although we should say he won the Oscar that he won for this movie was the only Oscar he won for acting. He did get also an honorary Oscar in 1984.
That's ridiculous, I tell you. I mean, he was in some Best Pictures and obviously, such range, right? We talk about this aw shucks thing, but he does in this movie too have a little more of an edge, right? Go watch him in the Hitchcock stuff, Vertigo and Rear Window, and then, some of the Western stuff. Like he's an absolute legend.
Oh, yeah. And I think, as he did those Westerns as he got older, and he had that kind of world weariness later in his career that he really brought to a lot of those Western roles. So Cary Grant, we talked about, of course, in our episode on Only Angels Have Wings, Jason's favorite movie to do a radio impression of.
Thomas Mitchell.
Yes, and our guy Thomas Mitchell. And Cukor, we've talked about in our episode on the women, which to me, this is so like they're right alongside each other in terms of the wit, in terms of the interplay. That was also based on a stage play. And I know, Jason, you don't like the women.
Yeah, the difference is this one was good and that one was bad. But I mean, look, they're all legends, like we said, and we have talked about Cukor and Josh. I know Gaslight is probably your favorite of his films, if I'm not mistaken. He did win the Academy Award for Best Director for My Fair Lady, where the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite film of his is The Women, but Gaslight is very good as well.
That's not true.
It's true that it's my favorite. I know that you don't like
definitely
it.
It's definitely not. So I'm just kidding with you, Josh. It's cool, man. Maybe it'll be a rewatch for me one day. And then, Cary Grant, just watch him in literally everything he ever does. I would say His Girl Friday is really a great companion piece. I didn't love Bringing Up Baby as much, but I would say that. And then, of course, going back and watch the Hitchcock stuff again, Suspicion, Notorious to Catch a Thief, and North by Northwest.
Yeah, all sorts of great movies there from them. Katharine Hepburn, as we said, this was her comeback, and it worked. She was a huge star for decades after this. We mentioned her longtime professional and personal relationship with Spencer Tracy, who they worked together, I think, in 8 films. She won 4 Best Actress Oscars for Morning Glory, which was prior to this, and then later for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, The Lion in Winter, and On Golden Pond. And just the breadth of her career, she won her first Best Actress Oscar in the 1930s and her last Best Actress Oscar in the 1980s.
Just insane. Nominated 12 times. Pick any of the movies that you want there, right? The African Queen, Long Day's Journey into Night, Summertime. Just an all-timer right here. Josh, here's a fun fact. When Cate Blanchett won the Oscar in The Aviator for playing Katharine Hepburn, it was the first time where the portrayal of an Academy Award-winning actress was won by an actress.
Oh, yeah. And Cate Blanchett, I have to say, Jason, does a better Katharine Hepburn than you do.
What?
And she's very good in that film, which I mean, that's one of my favorite Scorsese films.
Agreed.
And I feel like, it's tough to do a performance of a famous person who's famous for like people doing impressions of them and make it seem like a real person and not just an impression. And I remember Cate Blanchett doing a very good job of that.
When I was reading about Katharine Hepburn, there was so much just on like the amount of work and craft that she put in, right? Where she would just work the text and the script to the height of where she could get it. And I appreciate, and obviously it paid off. Like, what a craftsman, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, and she just had this, like, I was looking through and I haven't seen almost any of her later films. I don't think I've seen anything she did past the 50s, but she had this incredibly long, varied career. And I mean, not only did she win that Oscar in the 80s, but she continued working in like TV movies all the way into the 90s. So just an amazingly long career. And I should see, stuff like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which I think is probably a little dated, but check that out, or The Lion in Winter, other things that she won Oscars for, I'm sure are worth watching.
Was it Katharine Hepburn who said the best way to have a successful marriage is to have 2 houses next to each other, one for you and one for your mate?
I don't know. I mean, she and Spencer Tracy were never married, so that might have been someone else who said that.
Well, then ignore the whole thing, everybody. Ha 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 ha. Good times, Josh. There is a one-woman play about Katharine Hepburn by Matthew Lombardo called Tea at 5. And the first act starts with her being box office poison. I believe the second act is all about the Philadelphia story and her comeback. Sounds like, I mean, if I was an actress trying to do a Katharine Hepburn impression, maybe I would try to launch that play.
I was just going to say, when is your production of that opening? Because I can't wait.
That's what people have been waiting for, yes. Right there. Josh, you mentioned Ruth Hussey and her Oscar nomination here. We did see her and talk about her in The Women. She's also known for The Great Gatsby, Northwest Passage, and then, a working actress beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, seems like the kind of thing that, especially with that Oscar nomination, might have launched her into a big career, but she didn't have a lot of leading roles, and she did a lot of TV work into the 1970s. So, like you said, a working actress, but never at that level of stardom that you might have expected. Virginia Wiedler, who is very enjoyable to watch as Dinah, the little sister.
Yeah, she does a great job here.
She was an incredibly prolific child actress, but retired from acting at age 16 in 1943, so just a couple years after this, and sadly died young of a heart attack in 1941 at age 41. So kind of a sad ending there. But, also, I believe, she's just been like so many films, just like working like crazy in the 1940s.
Right. The Women, Babes, and Babes on Broadway were the 2 that I had marked. Lionel Page we'll talk about a little later when we get to our Best Picture winner, How Green Was My Valley, where he was there, where he acted in the... Okay, go on.
I've been mentioning the 1956 version, the musical remake of this film called High Society, which stars Bing Crosby as C.K. Dexter Haven, Frank Sinatra as Mike Connor, and Grace Kelly as Tracy Lord. doesn't have a great reputation. And that is mainly just because it's no comparison to the Philadelphia Story. It's not a bad movie. It's a perfectly fine musical. It has songs by Cole Porter. They're not the best songs, but they're enjoyable. Louis Armstrong is really the best part of that film, who plays the sort of like Greek chorus narrator figure and is always there in the background. And he's clearly having a good time. There is absolutely no chemistry among any of those three stars. Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra supposedly did not care for each other, and you can almost see that tension on screen. Grace Kelly is great at being glamorous, but she doesn't have that like flinty quality of Katharine Hepburn here, I think, to play Tracy. So it's interesting to watch, but it's overall kind of a misfire.
I didn't see it, but we have mentioned that one of the best actor wins that your nominations that Cary Grant lost was to Bing Crosby in Going My Way in 1945. Another one was Gary Cooper in Sergeant York.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Going My Way, but what I've seen both Crosby and Sinatra in, like they're good, they're great singers, and they have some presence, but they don't have that same depth and range. They're kind of lightweight, I feel like, or more surfacey as actors. And you need them to bring that to this material, and they just don't.
Yeah, I loved Sinatra in From Here to Eternity, but that's different thing.
That's true. We talked about that. And I mean, he's had some big dramatic roles, and so has Bing Crosby, but maybe it's just in that particular movie that they're just kind of there to sing some songs and have a lightweight fun time, and it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, have fun, guys.
So the play was adapted numerous times for live TV as well as for radio throughout the 50s, and a bunch of different actors. The one thing I noted down that I would be fascinated by is that one of the TV adaptations featured Leslie Nielsen as C.K. Dexter Haven. I don't know about that.
Well, we know he's adept at comedy and drama, so I could go for that.
Yeah, I wonder, but I feel like the reason he was cast, when we talked about Airplane, the reason he was cast in that comedic role is because his dramatic work was very like straight-faced and serious. So I don't know if that's not the kind of actor you want for C.K. Dexter Haven.
I mean, Cary Grant is one of one. Let's just call it as it is, right?
Yeah, that is fair to say.
Yeah, so Uncle Willie, Josh, I just wanted to say Roland Young nominated for Topper, Best Supporting Actor. So
yeah, I recently watched, I think I might have mentioned this again, another 1941 movie, The Flame of New Orleans, with Marlene Dietrich, a Renee Claire movie, and he has one of the major supporting roles in that as another sort of like buffoonish upper class guy, and is very entertaining.
I really liked him in this.
Yeah, he's very fun in this. So anything else about the legacy of this movie you want to mention, Jason?
Just keep giving me more material that I can really do some great impressions for, and we'll be just fine here on Awesome Movie Year, Josh.
Yeah, I have confidence that you will pull out an impression soon of some random supporting character in some obscure movie, and it'll be brilliant.
Thank you. I let it come to me, Josh. I can't force it.
Yes, yes. It's the universe is speaking through you in a way with these impressions.
Oh, dear. You're not doing a good job, dear.
Okay.
That was like a combination of...
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of mutant, the substance version.
Hepburn Grant.
Yeah. So that's the Philadelphia Story, and that's this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can check us out online and on social media.
We're at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Jason Harris Comedy, or Jay Harris Comedy on all the things. Go for Jason, of course, on Letterboxd. Come see some comedy, like my email name says. Plenty of them going around.
Okay, yeah. Send Jason an email, I guess.
Yeah, I got Eat This Comedy. I got Jimmy Kimmel's. I got Trivia Nights. I don't need to give you all the details.
Well, people might want to know where and when you are.
I always post it on Instagram, but not knowing exactly what day this is released, it's tough to give the dates. I will say Kimmel's every Sunday at 6:00.
All right, and your one-woman Katharine Hepburn show opening soon. So
it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Tea for me.
You can find some old stuff from me, including something I wrote about this movie like 15 years ago at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky, and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at PiecingPod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, here on Awesome Movie Year, we love finding lost chestnuts, classics you might never have heard of, and rediscovering them. So get ready for our next episode. It's the National Board of Review and New York Film Critics Circle winner, a film you've never heard of called Citizen Kane.
What? Citizen
who? Yeah.
Yeah. We are
You'll watch it. You'll understand.
The first people to make this joke. So tune in next time for Citizen Kane. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.